Welcome to another FPL transfer tips video ahead of Game Week 30, and because we only have 4 fixtures and 8 teams involved, I'm actually going to do 2 players to buy, hold, sell and skip in each section rather than the usual 3. But if you like this long term, then this could be the change and it could be a slight alteration. The videos will be a bit more concise and shorter in that regard, and you can always leave down in the comment section below your thoughts about who should be in the buy, hold, sell and skip sections. And Game Week 29 was a pretty decent week for me, but I'll talk more about that in the deadline stream tomorrow, so don't worry about that, and let's focus straight on this. It will come as no surprise that the first buy of this week is Harvey Barnes, and Leicester have that double in 33, which is pretty good on paper there against Everton and Newcastle away, and some pretty good fixtures before and after that. Even that Manchester United fixture in Game Week 31, that is not a bad one by any stretch of the imagination, as we've all become accustomed to. Now, Harvey Barnes has got some decent stats in the last 6 game weeks, but across the whole season, they're nothing spectacular. 3 goals and 7 assists. I think I started with him at the beginning of this campaign, and it didn't really pay off because he just kept on blanking in the first few game weeks, but he's shown some form recently, and I think that Leicester will definitely be counting on him in order to achieve anything this season, and to be honest, it looks a bit too late for that. And 6 big chances, 5 big chances created, an XG and XA of over 5 and 4 respectively, so pretty decent underlying numbers that match with the big chances created and the goal output. Although he has been underperforming in terms of the goals, you would expect a bit more, but these kind of limited stats are mainly due to his limited minutes this season, unfortunately, and kind of the on and off nature of his entire campaign through injury and other factors. But I still think Harvey Barnes is probably the best Leicester midfielder to go for right now. I tend to prefer these informed players, and even though, as we'll talk about later on with other Leicester assets, although there are others to consider, I still think that Harvey Barnes right now is the pick of the bunch, although maybe the stats don't really suggest it in terms of him being the outright favourite, but I would still favour Harvey Barnes over the rest. We've gone for another Leicester midfielder in this week's video, and the main reason is because a lot of the Spurs assets we talked about last week, like Doherty, Kulusevski, Son and Kane, so the same still applies to them, and I want to focus on new players. Now, although I prefer Harvey Barnes right now due to his form, James Maddison has similar stats to Harvey Barnes across the whole season, and he is still a really streaky player. He showed his class around the December period, and if he can reach that, he's arguably a better option than Harvey Barnes. His ceiling is higher, the bonus points, the kind of range of ways he can get those points, you know, through free kicks, through set pieces, from open play, assists and goals, etc. What is rather surprising is that Harvey Barnes has more assists than James Maddison and better expected assists and very similar, if not identical, big chances created, but James Maddison edges him in terms of goals, and that is really key for a midfielder, to be fair. He's got over double the amount of goals that Harvey Barnes does, and his XG is very similar, big chances as well. So James Maddison has been more clinical this season, and like I said, his ceiling is higher due to the bonus points he accumulates, so you could favour James Maddison, but it's kind of more of a hopeful one because Harvey Barnes is showing the form recently, whereas James Maddison really isn't. So it's up to you who you pick, and I don't think there's much to split them overall. I think Harvey Barnes typically is the better goal scorer, although this season the roles have flipped and it looks like Barnes is the better creator and Maddison is the better goal scorer. But if I had to pick one right now, I would slightly edge towards Barnes just because of the form. If it wasn't for that, normally in most cases I would prefer Maddison due to his higher ceiling and all of the rest that comes with it. So let me know down in the comment section below, who do you prefer between Harvey Barnes and Maddison? I still wouldn't discount Maddison just yet, and he could be just as good of an option, if not even better. We're now onto the hold section, and some people are looking to buy Ivan Toney. I even considered it at the beginning of the week, and I still think it's a decent option. I think that Leicester fixture is really good. You can bench him against Chelsea and then play him against West Ham, Watford, Tottenham, etc. And he's a decent option until the end of the season, and he's showing form. How many strikers right now are showing form? Just one other really in Harry Kane on a consistent basis. So Ivan Toney for me is worth purchasing in some cases, but some of you will just have him already and I would hold. And if you don't have Harry Kane, for example, I would rather make it a priority to buy him right now over Ivan Toney. But let me know what you're going to do about Ivan Toney as well. His stats have been improving in recent weeks. His XG is almost 10. His expected assist is over 5. 11 big chances and 7 big chances created. But in recent weeks, when he's been getting these goals, most of them have been from penalties, and the stats aren't anything spectacular in recent weeks. They're just kind of decent throughout the whole season. You know, 56 shots, 45 in the box, and 25 on target, 11 goals and 2 assists. These are pretty decent numbers, but they're mainly boosted by the last 3 fixtures he had against pretty good opposition. So maybe you could argue the Tony boat has sailed, but I like the inclusion of Eriksen into that side, the creativity he provides, and the just spectacular passes he provides from set pieces. So I think Ivan Toney still has some life in him yet, and he can get some returns even in this kind of more difficult fixture period. But I still would say that in terms of the double-digit returns and the sheer consistency he has been showing recently, I don't think that will be maintained, but I still think he can tick along nicely and he can be one of the best strikers to pair alongside Harry Kane. But I would rather prioritise Harry Kane and a few other areas in your team than going for Ivan Toney, despite that pretty decent Gameweek 30 fixture. I recently sold Jacob Ramsey and he got a 10-point return in Gameweek 29. I was never going to play him anyway, but the reason why I'm talking about holding Jacob Ramsey is because he's an enabler in your team. So if you still have him up until this point, I would rather keep him because the amount of money that it gives you to kind of spread across the rest of your midfield and the rest of your squad is very crucial. His stats aren't anything spectacular, but he is a budget midfielder, remember, and he's still getting some pretty nice returns. 6 goals and 1 assist in his breakthrough season. He's been really good for Aston Villa. 15 shots in the box, 28 overall and 9 on target. His XG is just under 3 and his XA is over 2. 4 big chances, so pretty decent underlying numbers for his price. Compared to the rest and kind of premium and mid-priced options, they're very poor. But I think Jacob Ramsey is one of the best enablers right now. And with Broja being more prone to rotation, I think Jacob Ramsey slightly edges him as the best enabler that you can have in your team. But the kind of problem you would argue in terms of having a Jacob Ramsey is you'll have so many options in midfield that you probably would ideally have a budget option up front and then stack your midfield with different options like Harvey Barnes, Kulusevski, Salah, Saka, and many others that you can choose from. So that is something to think about, but I do think that Jacob Ramsey is worth holding if you are looking for that kind of budget enabler. I still prefer him over Gordon and the others around his price, although they're still pretty decent. So for me, Jacob Ramsey is a hold. There is the possibility of Smith Rowe playing against Aston Villa, and he scored last time out in Arsenal's 3-1 win at the Emirates, but Martinelli right now is first choice. He played the full 90 minutes against Liverpool, and arguably Martinelli was Arsenal's best player alongside Thomas Partey. So with Smith Rowe, I just would sell him, to be honest, whether it's this week or in Gameweek 31. He's just not going to be nailed long term. He's on the bench constantly, which is a bit of a surprise, but Arsenal found a kind of decent formula to progress and challenge for the top 4 with that front 4 of Odegaard, Saka, Martinelli and Lacazette. So it's a bit unfortunate for Smith Rowe and his owners. But what hasn't been so unfortunate is the kind of underlying numbers translated to the sheer goal output. 9 goals and 2 assists. His XA is a bit, I'd say there's an underperformance to a certain degree, but his XG, that is a massive overperformance of just over twice the amount of XG compared to the goals that he's actually scored. 31 shots with 23 inside the box. Obviously he's a budget midfielder, so these stats are pretty decent, but there is a big overperformance and it has kind of slowly but surely translated into his goal output in the end, although most of that has come down to the lack of minutes that he's getting right now, which once again is very unfortunate for Smith Rowe. He's been really good this season, so I would sell Smith Rowe. He's a great player, a really promising young talent, but I think his time is definitely up. It's been up for several weeks and months now, and I talked about this back then, but obviously we have the dilemma now heading into Gameweek 30. There is still the possibility of Smith Rowe starting, and also you already have quite a number of limited players and teams to choose from, so it makes it a bit more difficult, but regardless, I would still sell Emil Smith Rowe. There are reports that Mikel Antonio should be fine to play Tottenham, and in that case you could keep him for this week, and he's got some decent fixtures up until Gameweek 33, but I would still sell Mikel Antonio. Obviously he started the season so well, it's kind of common knowledge at this point, but he's just been so poor ever since Gameweek 4 really, and it's really surprising the fact that he did so well in the opening 3 game weeks with double-digit returns in all of them, and then suddenly he dipped massively. I remember captaining him back in Gameweek 3 and being pretty happy with that return, but decent stats still across the season. An XG of just under 10, his XA is over 6, 14 big chances, 8 goals and 8 assists. These are pretty decent numbers still, but there's a massive drop-off, and in the opening 10 to 15 games of the season, he was actually having more goal contributions than games played, but that's no longer the case for sure. 16 goal contributions in 28 games, and I think he'll be fine against Tottenham, and he could do well. He scored in the reverse fixture last time out with that incredible Neo celebration, but I would still sell Mikel Antonio, whether it's this week or beyond. You can go to Ivan Toney, for example. You can go to Harry Kane and a few others. I know there's not much to choose from. Even Che Adams potentially, with Southampton's potential double in Game Week 33. So honestly, I would sell Mikel Antonio. You can tell it's a blank game week. We're talking about completely different players right now, and we're in the last section, and we're talking about Christopher Ayer. And he's been really good for Brentford recently. And his kind of form reminds me a lot of Pontus Jansson at the beginning of this season, where he just consistently gets returns. Now, this isn't just directed at Ayer, it's also directed at all the Brentford defenders. Now, despite the fact that I still think Eriksen could be a decent purchase in midfield, and also Ivan Toney up front, I wouldn't go for any of their defenders, even though they have shown some good form recently, because they're facing Leicester away, Chelsea away, West Ham at home, Watford away still, from a defensive point of view, isn't that easy of a fixture, and Tottenham at home. Now, I don't really expect too many clean sheets in this period, maybe 1, 2 max. I don't really expect too many clean sheets there, so I wouldn't be going out of my way to get a Brentford defender. I would still rather target Wolves, Arsenal, of course Chelsea once they start getting some games from Game Week 31 onwards. The same goes for City, Liverpool, etc. His stats have been pretty poor actually. His XG is pretty much 0. His XA is just over 1. 2 big chances created, 0 big chances himself, and 4 shots overall, all of them inside the box. But I just don't really think I would go for him. He can get some bonus points, so if Brentford do keep a clean sheet, Christopher has a really good chance of getting those, but I just don't think that it's worth going for a Brentford defender right now, and I would rather go for their attacking-minded players such as Eriksen and Toney, and probably consider no one else from Brentford, although there is still Janelt, who could be pretty decent. Let me know what you think of this. I see a few of you kind of talking about getting one of these Brentford defenders, but for me, it's a no. Finally, we have Patson Daka. Now, he could do really well in Game Week 30, so if you really back him to score, don't let me discourage you from getting him. I just don't think he's a good long-term option, and the numbers don't really suggest the kind of sustainability in performance. 4 goals and an XG of 4, they pretty much match, but they're nothing spectacular. His XA is just under 2, and he's got 3 assists, 7 big chances and 2 big chances created. But Vardy will be back around April. You also have Iheanacho in the mix, and I think the main bulk of the points in Leicester will be in the midfield rather than the defence, the goalkeeper, or up front. So Maddison and Barnes are the standouts for me, and Daka could do really well in Game Week 30, so on a free hit you could go for him, and even as a 1 week punt. But if you want someone long term, for me, Patson Daka is not the solution and not the answer. And really, once again, we don't have many forwards to choose from, but Che Adams, probably Toney and Kane, they look like the 3 best strikers right now. Or even Cucho Hernandez from Watford, who is showing some really good form and some really big returns against the likes of Arsenal and Southampton. But for me, Patson Daka is just not the answer, and I wouldn't go for him, despite the fact that he has the quality and he is a really good finisher, but I just don't think it's his time in FPL. So that's it. We've talked about 8 players this time round compared to the usual 12. 2 players to buy, hold, sell and skip. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of them down in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this video, smash the like button and subscribe if you're new around here. It'd be greatly appreciated and really helps out the channel to grow. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM. We're almost at 1,000 followers on both platforms. Obviously on Twitter, we recently reached it, so thank you very much. And all the very best of luck for Game Week 30. There is still one more game in Game Week 29 yet to be played between Newcastle and Everton. And let's wait and see what happens there as well. And also UCL Fantasy. Check out the playlist for FPL and UCL Fantasy, which are on the channel and also in the description below. And be sure to also join me on Patreon, and as a channel member, you can get a long list of perks such as exclusive early access to all my videos at any membership tier currently as the special offer keeps on going. Be sure to join the Discord server. The link is also in the description below. As you can tell, there's a lot of links in there. So take care, enjoy the football, and I'll see you next time.